When we look at the ancient map making with the star systems and then the calendar and dating and the following of this solar barge, when you look at the solar boat and early navigation, prehistoric navigation, uh, pre-diluvian navigation during the time when we look at what they call Adamites or the primordial beginnings. When we look at this term Moor and why people say they're Moors, we understand the function of Moors, mooring a ship, navigation, and the traveling of our birth, meaning from conception, from mother and father to the process of our natal. All of these things are looked as a solar journey, the same way a solar boat, the same way the navigation, the way you navigate through the navel, and the recording of your birth. When you understand recordings, the ancient ciphers, the ancient codices, here in the Americas, Mesoamerican culture, when you look at the star and moon and Orion's belt, the mighty hunter, when you look at the land of Issachar and the sons of Issachar, which is a tribe of Israel, when you understand Israel, who is Jacob, where Africa, Akibalon, gets its ancient name from. When you look at Akibalon, the hill catcher, Jacob, and the particular lands here of the Americas, when we look at this particular tribe of Israel, known as the tribe of Issachar, and the sons of Tula, the mighty men, valiant men, that were able to understand the signs of heaven and to be able to teach these sea navigations to the rest of the tribes of Israel on how to circumnavigate and to do the pilgrimage and do the festive parts of the regalia and dogma. When you understand dogma, the canis minor and major, when we look at this term of the land of Canaan and the dog star, the Sirius star, Orion's belt, and the California coast here, being aligned with this Milky Way, especially during this time of the summer for the southern tropic and the northern tropic and the Arctic regions of Siberia up north, we find these ice deposits, heavy ice deposits here in this area from 150 degrees west. We understand that this particular time of going into the particular time of Sagittarius and Capricorn for December 21st for the winter solstice. We understand the the Caliph, and this particular time from the autumn, a full 90 degrees. This is the crossing. We understand this golden ratio of how the sun's energy going from tropic to tropic, making the spiral, calls for certain phenomena of the northern lights, and these different things from this magnetism. We understand the mouth, the spirant, the spirit, and the wind patterns of the winter here, known as the Kona winds. When you look at the Kona winds and sea navigation of the winter, the priest kings. So when you understand Kohen priests and the priest kings and the use of the winds to navigate across the waters, we understand the first naval armies, naval protection, ships, and how we navigated even in the pre-diluvian times since the beginning, because we understood angles and polar coordinates and the coordinate system of the earth based upon this magnetism that is created by the sun's movement from tropic to tropic. When we look at the tropic to tropic, this is 120 degrees to another 120 degrees to another 120 degrees. This is how the calendar of 4 months of 120 days for 3 seasons began to be calculated, along with these 3 pilgrimages that were after the end of 120 days. When we look at these ancient jaguar priests here in the Pacific Northwest and the teachings of shamanism and Kohen and sea navigation to bring medicine, to bring these things across the world, crossing the ring of fire. So we understand the dragon, how this connection with the dragon, this fantasy with the dragon, smoke, fire, hell, in the ancient lands of Canaan, what they call the promised land in the scriptures, which was an inhabitant of some of the things pre-flood. We understand in the biblical text, Joshua mentions before coming into this land of Canaan to remember what the ancestors did before the flood and how they went off and the things that they did with the knowledge. When we look at the ancient jaguar worship and the teaching of the underworlds, the rain gods, the fertility deities, some refer to as Baal. These ancient Moors, they understood this time period of Lent for the 40, the Mem, the waters. When you look at more waters, traveling on the waters, heavenly waters, celestial waters, all connected with the winter and the signs during the winter, when the northern hemisphere has an accessible larger window of darkness between 16 and 18 hours of darkness. We have this opportunity in this northern tropic to observe these Ma'or, these great lights in this northern hemisphere, to see these celestial signs, to make this southern crossing, the southern crucifix. So this is where the crucifixion of the death, and why this time of January, Janus, we understand why sometimes the death of New Year, we understand the death of the soul and this crossing and this leaving of this hemisphere of the Americas during this particular time of the winter solstice, the southern crossing that these jaguar priests did here, leaving from the Americas. We understand these dracons, and even in the Hindu astrology, they look at them as nagas, guardians, protections, right? So when you look at the 4 dimensions of astrology and the earth and the layout of the earth, and how these houses of 12, which are 36 dracons, and the layout of, when you look at Aries, these navigators leaving the Americas, coming into the lands of Indus Valley, Kush. When you look at things such as the Anu and the Negrito people, the small stature people. When you look at Anan, which is cloud in Hebrew, and Kanai, who was getting into earlier, the Kona winds, the Kona wind patterns, and Jonas, the sign, and the whale, the belly of the beast, 3 days and 3 nights, in correlation with the winter solstice, December 21st, to what we know as Christmas. When we look at merrymaking, Maru, and the Moors, and the Anu, these ancient Shemitic people leaving this coast here of the Americas, the eastern border of the Pacific, to navigate. This is why we find in the Pacific sunken temples, when we understand how the ancients and the formation of the earth has changed. We understand how ancient we are as a people. We understand even during the pre-Diluvian period, which is known pre-flood, as the book of Joshua refers to, who was known as the son of Nun. When you look at Nun to sprout, Abib in the spring, and Cambodia, in Asia, the cherry blossom during that time of the spring, as we head to that particular time period into Asia, which is known as the land of the sunrise. You have to understand these ancients coming across the lands from the Americas into these regions with the sun, and the mythology of the phoenix, the Phoenicians. So we understand Juno and Janus, the dogs, and the connection with Anubis and his twin, Wunawapat. We understand the summer and winter, and the time of the dead, the festivities, the annual crossings for the dead. We look at Jacob's burial that Joseph performed in Israel with the mummies. This is why we find the cocaine mummies in Peru and these different things, because of these ancient traditions of navigation across the Pacific, and then coming back across the Atlantic, from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean of Asia, to the Atlantic, back into